So, Ann, you're a self-described data girl, right? And Kay mentioned the poll that came out right before the election. I'm sure you've been crunching the numbers since. What have you learned? What went wrong?
Well, I'm not here to break any news. If you're hoping that I had landed on exactly why things went wrong, I have not. It does sort of awaken me in the middle of the night, and I think, well, maybe I should check this. This is something that would be very odd if it were to happen, but we've explored everything. The Des Moines Register, in an unprecedented move for transparency, has put online our crosstabs, our weighting system, and my analysis, and that I've not needed to update because it was pretty complete. We don't know. Do I wish I knew? Yes, I wish I knew. But as I sit here today, you know, one of the political commentators before election, but after the poll, said, you know, they've got all of these pollsters that are fidgeting with their numbers, and they're adding this into their weighting structure, and they're doing this with their sampling. And Ann Selzer has never had anything to fix. Well, till now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and Katerina's going to ask you a little bit more about methodology, so I won't get deep into it yet. But as Kay mentioned, you have a number of polls in the past that were remarkably accurate, and not just when everybody else was, on occasions when others were not, like that Ernst Braley poll in 2014. And maybe the answer is the same, but I'm just curious if you have any sense of why that methodology that has served you well for most of your previous careers suddenly did not in 2024.
I wish I knew the answer to that. But like I said, there wasn't anything that we saw that needed to be fixed. The reality is that more people supporting Donald Trump turned out. I'm eagerly awaiting the Secretary of State's turnout reports that will happen in January to see what we can glean from that. But there wasn't an adjustment to my data when we saw that it was going to be a shocker, that I would have said, okay, let's adjust it. It's not like I know ahead of time what the right numbers are going to be in the future. So you kind of take the data designed to reveal to me our best shot at what the future is going to look like. I'm mystified about what the motivation anybody thinks I had and would act on in such a public poll. I don't understand it. And the allegations I take very seriously. They're saying that this was election interference, which is a crime. So the idea that I intentionally set up to deliver this response, when I've never done that before, I've had plenty of opportunities to do it. It's not my ethic. But to suggest without a single shred of evidence that I was in cahoots with somebody, I was being paid by somebody, it's all just kind of, it's hard to pay too much attention to it, except that they're accusing me of a crime.
So you use a certain methodology in your election polling. Can you briefly explain your method and how you screen people for your poll?
I will. And that might be a key to something that we just can't check out. So thank you for that question. What do I know about the future electorate? Nothing. What do I know about the state of Iowa? Oh, I know a lot because we have a census. So as we are interviewing people, we're going to ask a question early on about how likely they are to vote. They can say definitely, probably, might or might not, probably not. So, or have you already voted? If you've already voted in our last poll, you're in. And if you say you will definitely vote, you're in. But for everybody else, we keep them on the phone to get age, sex, what county they live in. That's going to give us some geography so that we can weight all of those people. I think there were 1,100 and some in our final poll to look like the state of Iowa, because that we know. And then we extract from that those people who made our likely voter screen and interview them. So if there are proportionately more women who pass that screen, they're going to show up here. But they're weighted at the statewide level. It's a little geeky. But one of the things I've been thinking about is with caucuses, we take you if you definitely or probably will participate. And maybe our screen was too tight. I don't know. There's no way to undo it. And sort of check, well, what would the probably people have said? Because we very politely terminated the people who just said they would probably vote. But that's been our system since 2008.
So just to review, it sounds like you have likely voters and you get their age and their sex. Is there anything else, any other characteristics that you screen
They're
for?
county, so we can weight by congressional district if needed. Our weights for this were tiny. Any pollster would look at what our weighting report said and said, it's not like what we did by weighting our data, to make it look like a cross-section of all Iowa, had something crazy in that. The weighting didn't change the horse race at all.
And some pollsters have started looking at educational attainment of voters because there's kind of a split between college educated and non-college educated. Why isn't that something that you used?
We did take a look at that in previous elections, and in Iowa, we found that there was some interaction, statistical term, between the variables we were using in weighting. So it didn't make things better. It made some things worse. And then this is what I call putting your dirty fingers on your data. Once you see that it threw off the proportion of people who were married or not married, then you have to worry that it's actually harming your data rather than strengthening your data.
I've heard you say in a podcast that pollsters like linear, correct?
Yeah.
So let's go back to 2020. Donald Trump easily won the state. And then in 2022, Iowa was among the only states that had a big so-called red wave, and Republicans seemed to be on the ascendancy. So why weren't you more surprised or said, hey, there's something weird here, when you saw what your data was telling you?
Yeah. We did say something is weird here. We just didn't see that it was something in our data that was causing it. And the context for that answer about linear was looking at where Joe Biden was in June in the Iowa poll and where Kamala Harris was in September, and that was an uptick. I think she closed by 13 percentage points. I might not have that exactly right. But then you continue that line on the same angle, and you get to where she was at +3. So it looked like there was a movement afoot, and that this was, she had jumped more vertically to an even bigger, that would have given us pause. But Iowa has been, has voted twice for Barack Obama. So it's not unreasonable to think that things might have been moving a different direction.
Was one of the flaws in this poll, the fact that we who cover Republican Party politics continually hear Republican politicians and officials criticize the Des Moines Register? Obviously, it's the Des Moines Register Iowa poll. And some polling nationally indicates that Republicans are less likely to answer a polling question. Is that part of the problem with the data?
It could be. We do not mention the Des Moines Register's name until the very end, when we're asking if they're willing to be recontacted by a reporter. So, hello, I'm Ann Selzer. I'm calling from the Iowa poll. And our response rates are actually better than the national average. So I think Iowans are a little more wanting to do that. But of course that's a possibility. And of course there's a possibility, we finished interviewing on Thursday night, that things happened along the way, those final days, that pushed the Republican turnout or depressed the Democratic turnout. Like, I'm eager to look at those reports. That happened in 2004, that we showed John Kerry winning Iowa, and it was George W. Bush who ended up winning in a tight race. And former Governor Terry Branstad explained to me that over that weekend, after we were finished polling, there was this monumental effort in northwest Iowa to up the turnout among Republicans. So things can happen. I don't know if that's what happened at this point.
In November of this year, after the poll was released, you announced that this was the last election-related poll that you will do. Some people have doubts that you had that in the making. Now that this result has happened and it was so wildly off of the end result, is there part of you that says, I want to do another election poll?
I have been working on this plan, and there are key people who know that this was in the works for a long time, including the Des Moines Register, who was very aware that they were going to need to find their own succession plan for the Iowa poll. So, and there are numerous other people that I could point to. It looks like I got beaten and I'm out. I understand that. It's a correlation, it's not causality. Does it make me want to do one more? No, I think I was committed to my plan. Would I have enjoyed being here after a spectacular win and say that I'm out? Yes, I would have preferred that, but this is the way it is, and this is my journey to sort of get through and see what it is that I want to do in the future.
The person who is the previous moderator of this program, David Yepsen, worked in concert with you at the Des Moines Register. He was their top political reporter and an opinion writer as well. I know that one of his favorite Iowa poll questions of the 1980s and 90s was, do you believe in God? Do you have some favorite questions or favorite Iowa polls in the past that have been insightful or just something that sticks in your memory?
Well, thank you for that question. I agree with David. That was an interesting question. I don't know what the answer was right off the top, but we used to call these vegetable polls. So they're not issues so much as they are akin to an early question asked about, here are some vegetables. Is this a favorite? Is this not a favorite? Do you hate it? And what came out was lettuce was, they said the favorite vegetable, I would say the least objectionable vegetable that way. But we had a question about whether you eat your corn on the cob horizontally or in a vertical sort of fashion. We had a question on whether...
I'm sorry, I have to know the winner of that one. Do you remember how that went?
No.
Oh, no.
And it might have been in my file of would-be poll questions. I proposed it and didn't get it. But corn on the cob, of the foods related to Iowa, number one.
Sure.
Then pork chop. And then third, surprise, muscatine melon. So I think of these questions as kind of revealing what I call the soft underbelly of the Iowa psyche. So we asked a question about, do you own a pair of bib overalls? You know, here's the national image of Iowa. And it was, I think, 30-some%. Do you think bald men are as attractive to men who have a full head of hair? Would you marry the same person again? How would you rate your marriage on a scale of 1 to 10? And 45% gave their marriage a perfect 10. Now, is that a big number or a small number? And, you know, those sorts of questions that are just good for a good conversation over coffee.